we can end up with a Pierre Poilievre government, and he would take, in 4 years, he could do a lot to change this country in ways that we could never get back.
Get your popcorn ready as things intensify here in Canada. Welcome back to Moose on the Loose. My name's David. Today's top story, we've got Justin Trudeau giving his response to the ultimatum the 24 Liberals gave him to step down. He's already decided. Not even 24 hours later, he already knows the answer. We also discuss what the... Hey, boo. We'll also discuss what may happen from this. With that, we've got Tom Mulcair, Christy Clark, Vasi Capellos, all breaking this down. Let's jump into this. So here's a quick recap of Captain Schmuck's decision.
Sandy, today, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau dug in, despite a demand from dissenting MPs for him to step down by next week.
Are you planning on staying as Prime Minister past October 28th?
Yes.
Staring down a deadline delivered by disaffected Liberals during yesterday's emotionally charged Liberal caucus meeting, Justin Trudeau said today he's staying and focused on fighting Pierre Poilievre.
We're focused on winning the next election, and we've got a great team around us to do it.
Despite the efforts to show a united...
That's a good one-liner. Did somebody open the jail? Somebody get them back in their cells.
Trudeau is still facing more than 20 MPs who want a new leader, and said as much to his face behind closed doors yesterday.
I don't think that he felt that he needed to reflect at all. I think his mind was made up.
The Prime Minister's assertion coming less than 24 hours after telling his caucus he'd reflect on what he'd heard likely won't satisfy those MPs' concerns.
That strut of his, he's like, he's just strutting around. It's just vile. He's such a vile person. So smug and arrogant. Even when he walks, he has an arrogant walk. One thing's for certain, though, it's going to be easier for Poilievre to win with Trudeau as the leader of the Liberals.
With some suggesting they'd consider voting with the opposition if Trudeau didn't resign by October 28th.
I have had conversations with numerous Liberal MPs. Some of them say that they're worried that the carbon tax will cost them their seats.
Even if Trudeau can corral his caucus, his minority government's grip on power could be in peril, as the Bloc Québécois ultimatum seeking support on a pair of bills expires next week.
If there is a weakened Liberal Party, both the Bloc and the NDP might have an incentive to bring the government down.
Trudeau is adamant that he is sticking around, but big tests of his leadership are looming. He'll soon be shuffling his cabinet, and some grassroots Liberals are petitioning for him to go. Sandy? All right.
We look at the polling data right now. Trudeau's decimated the Liberal Party so badly that the Bloc could move up as the official opposition. Projected 58 right now. You never know. Once election time comes, there might just be a bunch of closet voters who, flip the script here. Now let's jump over to this clip here with Sean Casey. They just showed a brief moment, but he actually talks for a long time to these reporters, but there's one section here he speaks. It's just hilarious.
Is there any market amongst the people you're talking to? Is there any way for him to rehabilitate his brand and get people to listen to him again?
They don't think so. That's what I'm getting. But maybe they're wrong. And maybe he's wrong.
What do you make of his explanation that he thinks he's the best candidate? What do you make of what you heard from the Prime Minister yesterday?
It's remarkably consistent.
Look at that face! Remarkably consistent. That's him politely saying Trudeau is the most pompous, arrogant, smug, Machiavellian narcissist in the room. That's what he's saying with that comment. I respect the guy coming forward and just calling out Trudeau publicly on CBC. No one else has the gall to do it.
Do you worry that, I don't know, some MPs in the caucus might take more drastic steps, like, I don't know, voting in a confidence vote, or maybe even sitting as an independent, and that might, what would that do to the party? Do you worry about those things? More desperate.
I would hope that my colleagues have better judgment than that. Voting non-confidence in the government now plunges the country into another decade of darkness with the Conservatives. That's what it does. Running as an independent...
Oh, please. This guy's been drinking the Kool-Aid too long.
...splits the vote and has the same result. To a person, every single colleague that I've talked to thinks that Pierre Poilievre in the Prime Minister's office would be a bad thing. Anything that we do that makes that more likely is dumb. Pierre Poilievre...
Okay, I lost all respect for the guy again. It's funny how they talk about Pierre Poilievre as this dark lord who's going to just shroud Canada. It's like, no, we've already got that guy in office right now. His name's Justin Trudeau, who has absolutely ruined our country. What are these people worried about? You can't have anyone worse than Justin Trudeau. You could pick someone off the street, say this person in this white truck here, put them in as prime minister, we'd have a better country.
I've said today that Liberals have approached him and his caucus looking to vote with the Conservatives. I think he said on the carbon tax, but presumably on a confidence motion. Do you believe him? Do you think that's actually happening?
I don't believe it for 1 second. It's like so many other things he says. Take care, man.
Yeah, he's a nutcase. They're all nutcases in there. Jumping over to CDV here. So Tom Mulcair has some interesting insights on the situation.
Lots going on yesterday with that tense caucus meeting. What exactly was achieved?
I don't think a lot has changed. There's strong pressure now, not only from caucus, because when you have more than 20 people asking you to step back from your function as prime minister and leader of the party, then you're in deep trouble. But now we're being told that grassroots organizers, people who are in the Liberal Party, are going to be taking this up as of next week. So I think that the pressure is going to be, frankly, unbearable for Trudeau. I know how strong-willed he is and what a strong leader he's been in many respects, but that willfulness could actually turn into a big problem for the party that he's headed since 2013, because he was already there for a couple of years before he was finally elected as prime minister.
Even him getting out of his car, he's got the smug little, like he's just got to wiggle around like a weirdo. Like, can he just walk around normal and not be arrogant while he walks?
It's really going to be a problem, Marcia. I don't see an easy exit for him. One of the gracious things he could do would be to pull on that emergency brake that we call, prorogation.
He's doing it still. Like, every camera's on him. He's like, ladies. This guy is just such a clown. Like, he's just embarrassing to watch. And yes, so he saw his prorogation on the table. I got to think he's going to take it. What other options does he have? Is he just going to keep not running the government doing nothing? They're just sitting there doing nothing right now?
You essentially suspend Parliament for a time, and you give people a chance to organize some form of leadership to replace him. And he'd probably like to stick around till 2015, so that little plaque under his painting in the gallery says Prime Minister from 2015 to 2025. So if he makes it into next January, he's accomplished at least that. But I think that he's hurting his party.
I think he's right. Having his name with a number, the plaque going to 2025, showing it 10 years. That's enough for this guy just to keep burning the country into the ground, just running us downhill just as fast as possible. It doesn't matter if it means he gets his one more number added to that plaque, having it 10 years versus 9. He's the kind of guy who would do that. He would. He's the kind of guy who only loves himself. I think Tom's onto something here. I think this isn't totally plausible.
Party now. I mean, he's got to start thinking about them and the future. There are a couple of really strong cabinet ministers, of course, who would run. Very strong people from outside. We learned this week that Christy Clark is very interested in the job and has been taking...
So Christy Clark gets interviewed on this exact topic. We'll bring this up later after this one.
French lessons to be able to be up to the task. Mark Carney, of course, doesn't need French lessons because he speaks it quite well, but he's also somebody with a great track record who would be interested. So it's not for want of people, but Trudeau's got to understand that his time is up. So far, he's not listening, but I do think that there are enough people telling him the same thing, that he's going to have no choice.
Okay, so if, Tom, then he were to prorogue Parliament, are you telling us that would be a signal that he is going to step aside, not trying to just take a break and work with the party and rebuild their faith and trust?
No, he can't rebuild their faith and trust when he remains 22 points behind in the polls. People understand that this isn't a one-off. It isn't a rogue poll by one polling company that has an axe to grind against the Liberals. This is all polling companies, all polling firms across the country telling them the same thing. It's going to be a slaughter for the Liberal Party if he remains leader. And he, I guess, is having really a lot of trouble understanding that it is personalized around him. So it's less about the...
Because in his mind, he can't understand why anyone wouldn't love him, how he can't not be the greatest person ever. In his mind, he's a superhero. He's the best. He walks around with that stupid little strut. That's what a narcissist is. He can't even fathom the idea that he's not the best. That's why I said yesterday and the day before, he's not stepping down. And as you heard here today, he's not. He's been the kind of guy who grew up with a silver spoon, doesn't care about anyone but himself. Why would he do what's best for some other people in their jobs? He doesn't care. That's nothing to him. Those people are nothing to him. And us, the Canadian population, are nothing to him, but a bank account that he can mug. We got $400 million, a scandal, and scandal is a word they use in Parliament, scandal and corruption. If this happened on the street, if I went to a bank and stole $400 million, I'd be in jail in half an hour. Like, because it's the government, well, it's called a scandal because they're allowed to rob us. They're allowed to steal our money, kind of, until they get held at account. But then they use all these tricks to weasel their way out of it. The backbone of our system needs to be fixed because it's really stupid.
The long-standing Liberal brand that's gone through ups and downs. I mean, they had a really tough time before Trudeau came in. They almost got wiped out when Ignatieff was the leader. But Trudeau's done an amazing job of building them back up. But what he's got to understand is, he can't be like the old French kings who would say, après moi le déluge, after me, let the flood come in because there's nothing else that matters. I've been there. Trudeau's got to have a little bit more, frankly, abnegation. He's got to step back from himself and say, okay, it's not a one-person party. It's a party with a strong history, and he knows that better than most. He can bravely say the party is strong and united, but he knows that that's not the case. And he knows that, this is the great irony of it. He says that this is all about defeating Pierre Poilievre and his Conservatives, but in point of fact, politically, the only person in Canada who can ensure the victory of Pierre Poilievre is Justin Trudeau by staying there.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So Tom, I think, pointed out there actually quite well. He's on point tonight. Because Trudeau is the one who came in and saved the party, now his arrogance thinks he's the only one who can save it now. Go down to, like I showed in the previous video, go down to Crab Park in Vancouver and all the people sleeping in tents. In his mind, I bet you he thinks he could walk in there and people would love to see him, like he's some sultan, and they would praise him. He can't even fathom the idea that someone else would take over his party that he saved. And I think in his mind, he is the Liberal Party. It's number one and it's only him. And everyone else is a minion, a slave to help him. His little underlings, his little puppets to control and command. This is a one-person party for Trudeau, and everyone else there is just his little helper. His arrogance will get the best of him, as Tom just said. He is the best person to get the Liberal Party defeated. So jumping over to this interview now on CTV, we got Christy Clark. Yeah, this is the Wicked Witch of the West here. For those of you living in Central or Eastern Canada, this is the equivalent of Justin Trudeau in female form. She is just as evil as he is. And that's saying something. There is no Liberal Party in British Columbia because of her. She destroyed that party. She destroyed the province. And as we go through this, we're going to bounce back and forth between what they're saying here and all of the scandals she was involved in. Let's just start this off with a scandal alleging her rivals hacked her party's website with no evidence, without any evidence whatsoever. Christy Clark claimed the opposition NDP had launched a cyber attack against the BC Liberal website. While this might sound like the dictionary definition of lying to you, Clark later clarified she merely had jumped to conclusions.
I have to start with Christy, who gave me a bit of a heart attack a few days ago at the prospect of losing a front bench panelist. I'm going to start straight up and...
You got to wonder why she's a front bench panelist. With a media that has been paid by the Liberal government, and this is the most liberal as you get them here.
Direct with you, Christy. What's going on? Are you potentially throwing your hat in the ring if Mr. Trudeau were to step aside?
Well, I can tell you, Vashi, that I got a lot of emails from a lot of people saying, hey, we love you with Vashi on CTV, don't go. Just like from across the country. It's really been quite amazing.
Are you kidding me? No one loves this woman, except for a couple of nut jobs left in BC.
The Prime Minister has decided he wants to stay. He's going to stay. He's going to run in the next election. And I have never said, from the minute I left politics, that I was going to close the door on politics forever. But there's no job open. This is sometimes what happens inside the room. It's, and so I think the problem we have, and Mark Miller put this quite well, I think, with you a few minutes ago, which is all of the machinations that are, that have seized the media's attention in the room have really drawn attention away from the things that Canadians are thinking about, which is, can my kid ever afford to own a home? Can I get a bigger pay? How do I get a bigger paycheck? What do we do about jobs? What about the standard of living? Those are the things that we need to be focused on, that I need to be focused on, and all Liberals, I think, need to be focused on, because
all the Liberals have destroyed that. Trudeau has destroyed that. Why would Canadians trust you guys ever again with our money, with you guys in power, steering the ship?
If we don't, Pierre Poilievre will become the Prime Minister, a man who has never run anything in his life and whose policy book appears to consist of 3 slogans he repeats nonstop. And I think that kind of easy sleight of hand, that division and divisiveness is terrible for our country.
You know what's terrible for our country? Christy Clark scandal number 2, making tens of thousands with disabilities pay $579 more for bus passes. Showing their compassionate side, the Clark government clawed back the discounted bus passes for 55,000 disabled British Columbians, a group already more likely to face unemployment and poverty. Let's get another one here. How about this one? Getting her climate change plan ripped apart by her own experts. Late on a Friday afternoon in August, Premier quietly released her so-called climate leadership plan, a plan so ineffective at dealing with climate change, it was dismissed by one expert as pathetic and cowardly.
Do you think, Christy, that Justin Trudeau should stay as leader, or do you think he should go?
I think he has the right to stay. His caucus has so far, and we saw this today, maintained confidence in him. The party maintains confidence in him, and he's the leader of the party. He says he's going to run, and Liberals across the country need to support him in doing that. Otherwise, I mean, keep your eyes on the prize, folks. We can end up with a Pierre Poilievre government, and he would take, in 4 years, he could do a lot to change this country in ways that we could never get back.
Unbelievable. This nutcase Christy Clark is getting this one brought up. BC taxpayers lose $43 million in land deal. Clark government sold off 150 acres of land in Port Coquitlam for $43 million below the appraised value to make a quick buck to produce her balanced budget for 2013-2014 fiscal year. That's unbelievable. And I lived in Port Coquitlam during that time. One lot was appraised for $5.6 million, sold for just $100,000. Worse still, the fact that they sold the discounted land to a Liberal Party donor. You don't get more corrupt. This is Trudeau level corrupt. Or how about this one, the Nestle controversy? It came to light that she was going to sell Nestle BC water for a whopping $2.25 for 1 million liters. Some areas of BC are already on water restrictions, but don't worry, you can always stop by your local store to buy a bottle of Nestle water because they don't face restriction on how much water they can take, even during water shortages. This is Christy Clark, folks. She's an absolute disastrous human being.
I have 3 people here who have spent a long time in politics. And Gary, I wonder, particularly as someone who has had to oversee a caucus, who has had to worry about caucus management and re-election and all those things. When you look at the situation as it exists, do you think it is tenable in the long term for the Prime Minister?
Well, I think I predicted last week that he believed strongly that he was the one person who could beat Pierre. And I think so I'm not surprised at his decision today. But my God, it's taken a long time since the St. Paul by-election where they were trounced in Toronto. And then, of course, you've got this situation. I don't think it's just the Liberals just have to worry about Pierre. I think they also have to worry about Mr. Blanchette, who is, according to my sources in Quebec, he is very popular and he's riding a real popularity wave in Quebec, which represents another huge risk to Liberal incumbents and to the Liberal.
Yeah, I mean, Blanchette's done a great job of using the OAS to get support and thus might propel him to be the official opposition, which would be ridiculous in Canada, considering they don't want to represent the rest of Canada, only Quebec.
You know, when the country really wants more can-do decision-making, it kind of reinforces a brand they're developing on dithering first and acting second.
I mean, the Liberal brand is basically just stealing tax dollars through multiple corruptions. If they could come forward and say, you know what, we messed up with that SDTC thing. This is not how this was supposed to go. Put in jail Annette Verschun, put in jail this person, that person, get back the $400 million. Oh yeah, Christian Firth, put him in jail, get that money back. Like, they're not doing that. They're not getting our money back, and they don't care because they're in on it. That's why. Otherwise, they would deal with that in an honest manner. They're not honest people.
The caucus's desire to see a proposition put before them and Canadians about why, in a change election, voters should stick with the Liberals. Like, what more beyond what we've already done are we going to do to improve your lives? Do you think they need to? And how urgently? And how much change does it in itself need to signify?
Well, I think that they all need to. I think all 3 parties are in some way not speaking to Canadians. I mean, you've got Poilievre, who just has these 3 slogans, and it's just, there's no plan, there's no big idea, there's no evidence that he could ever get any of that sort of thing done. It's just...
Let's show you some evidence here. All the donations from other provinces. If all the donations from oil lobbyists wasn't bad enough, it turns out only a small percentage even came from BC in the first place, most coming from headquartered in Alberta. Going on, it says it's illegal in most places in Canada, but not in Christy Clark's BC. A recent investigation by the Globe and Mail showed Clark's BC Liberals are taking cash from offshore oil and gas companies, European pharmaceutical companies, and Beijing investment firms. As of October 2016, 3/4 of companies awarded the plum and sole secured contracts by Clark's government are also Liberal Party donors. That's just coincidence, surely. How about number 11, spending million on partisan ads, spending 15 million on cynical partisan ads while cutting public services, asking everyone to tighten their belts. How about number 12, hiring staffer facing criminal charges? In 2013, the BC Liberals hired former Ontario Liberal staffer Laura Miller as its executive director. Not long after, Miller was charged with breach of trust, mischief, and misuse of computer system to commit mischief along Dalton McGuinty's former chief of staff, David Livingston. Going on here, it says, even though they let go of her, they rehired her. This one here, $500,000 on private flights. Christy Clark billed taxpayers for a private flight to fundraising dinner. $6,000 for a Learjet to fly to Prince George. Triple deleting all those emails. Back in 2015, Information Commissioner found that the practice of triple deleting emails, shielding the government from freedom of information requests was a routine practice among the Clark's government staffers. She should be in jail for what she's done.
Divide, divide, divide. And then for sure, the Liberals have got to get focused on talking to people where they are about what's going on in their lives right now. So that is thinking about the cost of living, thinking about lower taxes for people across the country, improving the investment climate, growing the economy. I mean, those are the things people want us to be talking about. They want us as Liberals to be out there fighting for them and not in the back rooms talking about all the machinations. And, you know, frankly, all the parties have been obsessed, I would argue, with the machinations, with what we've seen the House of Commons practically shut down and all of these motions after motions that aren't really about anything except for kind of fighting for power. And I just think people should be talking about Canadians and our economy and our kids' futures. That's where Canadians want us to be. The Liberal Party needs to be there, and so do the other three parties in the House of Commons.
Now, what we should be talking about, billing the taxpayers $3,266 for oysters, or Christy Clark leaking a secret strategy document. BC Liberals claim they obtained the NDP secret strategy document, which actually turned out to be a Microsoft Word document highlighting the party's plan to boost living standards for working middle-class families and fight climate change. Or this one here, Clark already earned a six-figure salary as premier, so lots were surprised to learn that she's also paid between $30,000 and $50,000 each year by her own party by fundraising work. That's unbelievable. Or this one here where they spent $150,000 to shut down Vancouver Bridge for a yoga day, which is also insulting because it was done on National Aboriginal Day. Christy Clark also spent $1 million on government photos to take photos of her and her cabinet ministers. She sent a staffer to spy an NDP meeting with youth. Like, this is low. This is really bad stuff. Insulting whistleblowers, spending $1 million to upgrade the church Clark goes to. Are you kidding me? Promoting a company Clark once chaired, allegedly interfering in a local election to help her brother, not telling the truth about BC's job creation numbers, getting investigated by Election BC's over donations from lobbyists, giving a $39 million mortgage to a condo developer, releasing a jobs ad full of false claims. This goes on and on and on. These are like unbelievable. This person should be in prison. This person should be nowhere near getting into politics ever again in Canada. Approving a polluted soil dump upstream of 12,000 people. This is a person talking about climate change. Are you kidding me? Heavy metals, petroleum, nitrite contaminated soil, and groundwater relied upon by Vancouver Island community of 12,000 residents. This is that one here. Court halts dumping of contaminated soil near BC Shawnigan Lake. Christy Clark is an absolute menace. She is Justin Trudeau level of evil.
Just a quick follow-up, but with the Liberals specifically, I mean, I take your point on the other parties, but at this point, you know, when you're 20 points ahead and have been for a number of months, the pressure is a little different. Do the Liberals need to say what they're going to do, and do they need to do it soon, I guess is my question.
Yes, I think that the Liberals need to be less distracted by internal machinations and a lot more focused on what what we are going to do for Canadians to try and address the cost of living and the other issues out there. Because, and I agree with the Prime Minister on this. Pierre Poilievre poses a very real threat to the unity of our nation, and polarizing Canadians with just in such a joyful manner isn't good for Canada. It's not good for Canadian democracy, but it's also doesn't get us on the path to solving any problems. We can only do that if we start to find ways that we can get together rather than all of the things on which we can disagree, which seems to be Mr. Poilievre's specialty these days.
Lisa, I'll give you the floor to respond to that.
I mean, I'm not gonna argue in the case of an election. All I'm gonna say is axing the tax does have an immediate impact on the affordability of life. And having an election based on that, I don't think is a bad thing, because you're gonna have people weighing against creating a lower carbon tax or eliminating the carbon tax on the retail side versus what do you want to do for a cleaner future? What do you want to do for the environment? I don't think that's a bad debate to have within an election, but we are stuck. I will agree with Christy. We are stuck in a situation, and the rest of the world is lapping us on economic growth and competition and the things that are going to keep our kids here in the country, as opposed to having them go off to somewhere else where they're going to work and lose their skills. Kids are not happy in this country whatsoever. And I say kids, I mean under 32. Everyone under 40 is a kid to me. But the young generation is not happy, and they can easily vote by moving themselves to a whole different place and work and not be here to build our country. And that actually is what keeps me up at night. So let's have the election. Let's go forward. I'm not afraid of a Pierre Poilievre Prime Minister. And I do think that axing the tax does have some kind of valid ballot box question that people are going to vote on.
Time to axe the tax. It's time to get Christy Clark off the television and get her to disappear into obscurity, because she's an absolute disaster. Even going into the comment section, like the second comment here, get rid of Clark now. She's a politician again. She's not capable of being objective. You bet, Christy, we want Pierre Poilievre. She may suck up in BC. Christy Clark can't be serious. Clark should not be on the panel anymore. She's so biased, it is disgusting. And jump over to this interview with Mark Miller. Just I want to play the last 2 minutes of this. Vasi gets him here pretty good.
Just before I let you go, Minister, I wanted to ask you about sort of the political story at the background of all of this. I know you're a supporter of the Prime Minister sticking around. Today, standing next to you, he said pretty emphatically that he will be the leader of the party heading into the next election. Did the concerns expressed by your colleagues yesterday to the Prime Minister, the ask of him to step aside, not warrant more than 18 hours of reflection?
Well, look, I think he is quite certain that he wants to lead the Liberal Party and Canadians into the next election. He's also quite resolute in reflecting on what was said during that caucus meeting, which was very honest. And, I was quite harsh towards my colleagues.
Yeah, you called it garbage.
Well, I said the whole garbage in and around this was distracting us from the main threat, which is highly toxically to the opposition and Pierre Poilievre. I stand by that. I didn't call any person.
No, but you called their concerns garbage.
No, I said that the fact that it had gotten out in the media, that it had gotten leaked, that it was being done in a whisper campaign was utter garbage. I stand by that, absolutely.
Do you know how that? Do you realize how dismissive that felt to your colleagues, though?
Oh, I've spoken to those colleagues. I'm actually really close to some of those guys, and we have some good conversations about where we think I disagree with them on the leadership of the Prime Minister. I think the vast majority of the caucus does. But they need to know that when you take a run at the Prime Minister, you're also taking a run at the vast majority of caucus, and you can't be that sensitive to think that you're immune from criticism.
This guy speaks in a way where it's so aggressive and abrasive, and it's very much clashing. It's a very weird energy. If this is the energy that's coming out of the caucus, coming out of his mouth, you got to think there's some serious vitriol. There's not unity in that party. Let's just put it that way.
Same time, we came out of that meeting, I would say, unified in the goal in defeating Pierre Poilievre. The Prime Minister still has a lot to reflect on the substance that was shared with him over that 3-hour period, including from people who support him and had some criticisms. And I think him taking it, him sitting there, having the honest conversations actually makes the party stronger. There's no party that is immune from those criticisms internally. It's just unfortunate. And I think it's a huge distraction when it takes the eyes off a highly destructive leader in the opposition in Pierre Poilievre.
Is though I guess what I'm confused about is there anything left to reflect on? I mean, the Prime Minister today said unequivocally, I'm the leader into the next election. I think the message was delivered to those who voiced opposition to that or asked him to consider otherwise? What else is left to reflect on?
Well, I'd have to share with you what was shared in caucus, Vashi, so you can get elected and join us, but I can't share. I can't share with you what went on in caucus. There were some very honest conversations. They were heartfelt. The Prime Minister is going to lead us into the next election.
Heartfelt. I'm crying some tears. My kids don't like Trudeau flags. Come on, dude. These guys are all losers.
He still has some things to reflect on, change that people want to see, that a lot of caucus wants to see. I think that's fair, and it does take more than a day, yeah.
Is there any doubt in your mind that he will be the leader of the Liberal Party in the next election?
None at all.
Okay, Minister, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Of course, it's his childhood friend. He's not going to say anything otherwise. He's gotten rich because of Trudeau. And he was already rich to start off with, but I'm sure he's gotten very wealthy because of Trudeau. These ministers are the worst. No one ever takes responsibility for screwing things up. Institute a per-country cap to reduce India's monopoly on our immigration system. Return to, yeah, this is what I've said for a while. There needs to be a per-country immigration cap. That way, you know, there's only a maximum of 100,000 that can come from each country. Then again, that would go against Jagmeet's plan to bring in more people from India. So jumping over to my group, let's see what memes we've got today. What did I learn? Well, I finished first, but we all got the same trophy. So I guess next time I won't be the idiot who works so hard. Yeah, that's basically what's going on. Jihad Jolie. Here we got a photo of Captain Schmuck putting on an act in front of all his den of thieves here. We've got a graph of violent crimes in Canada. Here's Trudeau. Not surprised. Real Canadian superstore garbage. Those are some black bananas. Only $1.50 a pound. What a steal. Winter's coming, as idiots call it, climate change. Gross pay, net pay. Yeah, that's... So there you had it. Not even 18 hours, and Justin Trudeau's basically shut down his whole caucus and just said, no, I'm going to be leading the party. Captain Schmuck knows best. The question is now, are some of them going to break off as independents? I bet you we're going to see at least a couple, 2 or 3. Or are they all going to stay silent and work on a plan with Pierre Poilievre to vote with him secretly during the next confidence vote?